And the same thing would happen with the spies. So after that, they clarified that, of course, they want to come over and fight. They don't want to not come into Israel and fight. They just want to be able to come back after the fight. So basically, altruistically, although Moshe would have agreed otherwise, they agreed to come over to fight the war with the rest of the nation. It took 7 years, by the way, to beat all the different Canaanite nations. And then they actually would have been released from their obligation at that point, but Rashi says they stayed on an extra 7 years to divide up the land. That took 7 years also, just the dividing up all the land. They stayed for that as well. So before they left, they created proper fortified cities for their children and so forth, so that when they came back, they would still be surviving. But they went over Jordan River and fought with the rest of the Jewish nation to conquer and to divide the land. So that whole thing is interesting to see Moshe's reaction, but also, more importantly, perhaps halakhically, there's a whole section in the Sefer Kedushin, which is called Tanai B'nai Gad B'nai Reuben. So these are the B'nai Gad B'nai Reuben. And the conditions that Moshe set down with them for how they could go about getting this land but still coming and fighting, the way he set up the conditions becomes basically the guidelines for how any conditions for a business deal have to be set up, and even for a non-business deal. But basically, anytime you want to set up a set of conditions, they have to be along these lines. So it's very interesting to see how they said it, how Moshe corrected them when he restated it, and from there we learn out the way it has to be done. For example, he said, if you come over and fight, then you get the land. But if you don't come over and fight, then you don't get the land. So from there we learn that a condition has to be doubled over. You can't just say if you come over and fight, you get the land, which implies that if you don't come over and fight, you don't get the land. But no, he doubled it over. He specifically elucidated that part as well, that if you don't come over and fight, then you don't get the land. So that's called Tanai coupled. That a Tanai, a condition, has to be coupled, has to be doubled over in order, and under most circumstances, has to be doubled over to be able to work. There are certain exceptions to that. But these are the guidelines for all conditions. For example, he put the positive before the negative. He said, if you come over and fight, then you get the land. If you don't come over and fight, then you don't. So you put the positive first. That's called Hain Kodem Lalav, the positive before the negative. That's another rule for normally how you're supposed to set up these conditions when you make it any kind of a condition in the transaction. And the third thing is, he said, if you come over, which is the action, then you get the land, right? In other words, the condition is you come and fight, and then you get the land is what you're trying to create the result. The resultant part of the transaction is you get the land. So you say, look, if you come and fight, condition, then you get the land. That's the actual act which we're trying to create, getting that land. That's what they really were interested in. So that's called Tanai Kodem L'Maisa. So there are 3 major rules of how to create a condition, which we learned from Tanai B'nai Gad B'nai Reuben. Tanai couple, which is doubled over, which again, these all have exceptions, which mean that you can get out of these rules under certain circumstances. The general rule is this rule, that you have to have a Tanai couple, that when you make a condition, you double it over. You don't just say, if you paint my house, you get $200. Theoretically, you should have to say, if you don't paint my house, you don't get $200. Because the Gemara says, theoretically, if you don't double it over, then they still get the $200, even if they don't fulfill it, whatever. But I'm not getting it. So that's one thing. So from these psukim, in this section, we learn out these halakhas. The Gemara Kedusha learns out these halakhas. And of course, like anything, there's my focus, how many of these conditions we learn out. But ideally, we learn all 3 conditions. Tanai couple, and Hain Kodem Lalav, the positive before the negative. You say the positive aspect first, that if you come over, you get the land, and then you say if you don't come over, you don't get the land. And also Tanai Kodem L'Maisa, the conditional thing that you have to do to get the carrot at the end, so to speak, that if you come over and fight, then you get the land. So that's called Tanai Kodem L'Maisa. So that's another part of this parsha that is very interesting, that we learn very serious halachas from this. But you also see how Moshe Rabbeinu treated these people who basically were putting their parnasa above coming into Eretz Yisrael. So it was a bit of a slap in the face to the whole idea of coming out of Egypt and entering Eretz Yisrael, although once they did settle, it's called Abel Yarden, on the other side of the Jordan. It does have some status of Kedushas Yisrael, Kedushas Eretz Yisrael. It's a question about produce that's grown there. Does it still need Trumas Amaisris? Could be it's only Midrabanan, but it is discussed. It is discussed. And that's the end of Parshas Matos. Talks about that transaction. Then Parshas Maseh deals with all the different journeys that they made, are enumerated and what that was all about. And then it also talks about the actual borders of Israel, where you have a map, how to draw the map, basically. We don't know a lot of the names, we don't know, but they were known. And then it talks about your miklat, the idea of the 6 cities that belong to Levim. Really, they have 48 cities. But 6 of them are more designed for protecting people who killed accidentally to run away to, even though all of them could protect him. But 6 were specially designed for that. And those are called Ir Miklat. And it talks a little bit about where they should be. 3 in Israel, 3 on the other side of the Jordan, and so on and so forth. Then it finishes off with some of the halachas of who gets to go, under what circumstances someone gets to go to an Ir Miklat if he killed accidentally. Obviously, you can't have had a machlokas with this person, or it would look like he really was trying to do it intentionally, which parenthetically means you have to always be b'shalom with someone. Because if not, you could lose out the chance of going to your mikvah. Right? So it's kind of like a built-in system. You always have to be b'shalom with your neighbor. Because in case you kill him accidentally, you don't want to ruin the chance of going to your mikvah.
What's the reason why they go? Because what's the reason why they go to Ir Miklat? Because the brother is going to take revenge, or
it's not just the brother. It's called Goel Adam. It could be any one of the relatives who's within close relative, and they're allowed to kill that person. They're supposed to be due justice. The justice process is supposed to still be carried on, the Torah says. But in cases where the Torah says he didn't kill intentionally and he won't be put to death, still the Goel Adam can kill him, so he may then run away to Ir Miklat. He initially goes there, but if they have to judge him elsewhere, they'll take him out, like in an armored vehicle, take him to the court case and then take him back.
Because you can kill him on the way, right?
Theoretically, they could kill him. But it could be if he's already protected by Beis Din on the way to the court case. I don't know if he's allowed to just bomb the armored car, C4 or whatever. Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but it seems like if the Torah wants him to have the due process of the court case, then it will protect him in that case. But the point is that if it's deemed that he didn't kill intentionally, then he theoretically could be killed. Up until when the Kohen Gadol dies. When the Kohen Gadol dies, then he's allowed to go home and live a normal life without going on with that. And that's why the mother of the Kohen Gadol used to always bring food to these fellows, because they shouldn't daven for her son to die. What?
Wow. It's the person who killed the Shogeg's Rebbe always have to go?
Supposedly he has to have a normal life there. So a normal life for a person means he has to have his Rebbe there. So then today, where I don't know if you have a Rebbe Mubhak anymore, it probably wouldn't apply. That in those days they had a Rebbe that he was the only one they learned from, and it could be he's the only one they were able to learn from. Then maybe it would be. The truth is, Levim in general were the teachers of Klal Yisrael. So most people would probably be happy to have a new Rebbe, because the Gemara says actually a source of knowledge is from one particular Rebbe to make sure you get like a consistency in your information, but a source of an understanding of Torah, how to think of the thought process of Torah, like be able to develop your own Das Torah, that is best done from a number of Rebbes, because each one has their own way of taking apart the halacha and dealing with the halacha and dealing with the sugi, etc. So you learn a different way of thinking. They say many of the Gedolim could always tell where a person had learned. The way he said things over, he knew he learned from that Rebbe, thought that way. The different Rebbe's have different ways of thinking, and sometimes if you're adept enough, you can gain that way of thinking plus another way of thinking so that you have a selection of sort of an arsenal of how to use your logic. So that's very helpful in having that variety when you're trying to develop a thought with a logic in Torah. But the actual facts of the Torah, that actually is a detriment, because then this Rebbe said things the way he learned it, and I heard a different thing, so it gets confusing if the information is different. So that's proper to learn from one Rebbe. But today, then we have that. Today, we just have a hodgepodge. Hope for the best. But this idea should still be honored as much as possible. Try to gain certain logic. See, this Rebbe has a certain way of thinking. And even if that appeals to you, but it also would behoove you to get another Rebbe's way of thinking. But maybe not at the same time, perhaps after a year or two. This Rebbe, then you have his way of thinking, but you see another way of thinking. But then what?
Pasha's Meiser, right?
Meiser?
Meiser.
But also Masei has had in it this idea about Ir Mikvah. What we're talking now about Ir Mikvah is in Masei. So anything appeal to you out of the survey of topics?
All of them. Do these guys have a spot?
It wasn't like a test for Shidduchim. This is like, do you want to learn something? Let's learn it.
Let's learn about the what happens when those guys want to split up.
Well, but they got him in a room. Okay, so let's see. That's towards the end of Matos, I believe. That would be.
Or, I mean, he might want to learn about the city of refuge. That's fine for me, too.
It's all good.
Okay, well, we can
So,
ask him.
Between those two, you guys
He
can
says he
decide.
has a preference. We can think about it.
No preference.
Okay, so this one of a B'nai Gad, B'nai Reuben is, since it's a double parsha this week, but often each one is by itself, so they list it as Shishi and also Shlishi, right? And if it's by itself, just Matos, it would be Shishi, but together, when it's two parshas together, it's only Shlishi. And it's also laid, Perik Lamed Beis, heart. Home is where the heart is. So they came to Moshe and said, our heart tells us we want Parnasa. We want Parnasa. And we see from the way they presented it that they actually were more intent on their Parnasa than on their family. But anyhow, okay. And the Torah says right away the problem. The problem was, truly, Perik Lamed Beis Pasuk Aleph, everyone have it?
Yep. Mikne Rav Chaya.
Say it louder, please.
Mikne Rav Chaya Lifnei Reuben Lifnei Gad. Atzuma Oy. A big dispute
Mikne means what?
over Koneh.
It probably relates to Koneh, but it actually means flock, like the type of animal that flock together.
So there's a lot of flock.
Yes. In other words, a lot of sheep, a lot of goats, whatever. Which could be, like we said before, they fought Midian, they got a lot of sheep there. They also had brought out of Egypt a lot of sheep with them.
Was Korach from Shevet Reuben?
Korach was a lady, but he was next to Reuben. They ended up commiserating with each other. That's how some of the new Reuben ended up together with Korach. They were neighbors. Oil Shachin, Oil Russia, Oil Shachin. Okay, so this Reuben and Gad, these two tribes had Mikne Rav, a lot of flock, huge flock, and it adds on at the end, not just that there was a lot, they were Atzum Ma'od.
Very great.
Very great, very great, very unbelievably big, basically. Where else does it do that? To say a few different descriptions of a lot. I'll tell you quite a lot. Remember where else it did in the Torah? When the Jewish nation was just starting out, you know how many we had just starting out? 70 individuals went down to Mitzrayim. When they came out, you know how many there were? millions, just a few hundred years. It doesn't work out statistically. So we say that we had 6, and every time they gave birth, they were like little rats. Give birth to 6 in a batch, at least, right? It says they use the word vayishritzu, which is the word normally sheretz means rat. It means they basically swarm. So the Torah goes on and on. It says vayirvu, vayitzvu, va'od ma'od, right? If you look at the wording there, what it describes this incredible, what got the Egyptians freaked out. They're like, what is happening? This, right? They're swarming, they're multiplying. So who knows what's going to happen? We have to do something to put them down, or they're just going to take over our country. Basically, like Trump is saying about the Mexicans, right? So you have this description goes on and on. Vayirvu, vayatzmu, ma'od, ma'od. We talk about it in Haggadah. Haggadah stresses this, that each time it's an extra description telling you an extra level of growth. So the same thing over here. It's using extra verbs, extra adjectives to the side to describe the flock. It's a tremendous amount. So they probably reason that Hashem doesn't bestow upon you something unless he wants you to use it. If Hashem gives you a certain talent, he wants you to use it, right? Like Matt is an incredible chef. Obviously Hashem wants him to use it for the yeshiva, right? But they may have misread it a bit, right? How much emphasis to put on those things is always a bit of a question. So instead of going to Moshe Rabbeinu and asking him, what should I do with all this wealth that I've been bestowed upon, they went and told him what they wanted to do. That was a bit of a mistake. And then what happened? Vayiru.
Vayiru is
as Eretz Yazer.
I saw the land Yazer.
Yazer is the name of one of the lands that they had conquered from Og and Sichon.
It's Eretz Gilad.
V'hinei, that area was incredibly suited for what? Sheep. For grazing of flocks, right? These animals, the big thing about it, they need to graze. They need a lot of luscious land to graze upon. So if you founded land like that, you figure it's a good shitta. I have a lot of sheep, and this is a great grazing land. Why not put the two together? It happens to be, by the way, that not only they had this problem, they were a little bit too connected to their parnasa, and it kept them from coming into Eretz Yisrael even. But also, the Gemara says that 6 out of the 6 Ir Mikvat, which are mentioned later on, 3 of them were in this Eretz Gilad. We're on the other side of the Jordan River. We think for 2 Shvatim, and also half of Menashe sort of joined them after they saw it was a good idea. They sort of said, can we also join them? But basically for 2 or 2.5 Shvatim, you have 3 Ir Mikvat for accidental deaths, as opposed to for like 9.5 or 10 Shvatim, we're able to get a buy with also just 3 Ir Mikvat. It seems a little bit disproportionate, right?
Absolutely.
You make the cheshbon, right? If 2.5, basically, not even 3 Shvatim, we're going to get 3 Ir Mikvat. That means you basically have 1 per shaving, right?
Yeah,
And even more than that, right? So like there must be a lot of people like running to Ir Mikvat over there. Whereas in Eretz Yisrael, they didn't need as many. It could be spaced out over the whole of Eretz Yisrael for 10 tribes, basically, 3. So each will get about 3 Shvatim per. So it's 3 times. They have 3 times as many people running to Ir Mikvat in the other side of the Jordan than in Israel. The Gemara says because Eretz Yisrael has a certain koach of bestowing wisdom, bestowing good midos. So they don't have as much of a problem of being much more careful about not killing accidentally even. I'm not talking about even killing intentionally, although they probably go together. And on the other side, they've had an incredibly more statistically, it was a place, the Gemara even says when someone traveled from one to the other, he kind of felt it. He felt like a little bit more like a killer when he ended up on the other side of the Jordan River. I don't know if it happens today. You go to Jordan, right, to Amman, to save money on an airplane ticket.
Yeah.
How do you feel at that time?
As soon as I get there, I'm just ready to kill. Yeah, absolutely. As soon as I land, I'm ready to eat someone.
So it's probably very subtly, but the Gemara talks about taken, which is interesting. But okay, just a fact. So maybe because they were so much more, or maybe because the land had a certain aspect to it, which is much more physical. They ended up wanting to make more parnasa than coming to Eretz Yisrael, which already showed a bit more of a inclination toward the physical than the spiritual, which ended up spilling out over into their being less careful with human lives, right? Which often happens also in big business, right? You are less careful with people's lives.
How do you pronounce the first word in that sentence?
Which one?
Vayavo'u?
We didn't start that yet. We'll let you try that pasuk now that you started it.
I thought that's where we were.
No, we were in the previous pasuk, but we're still discussing it.
Ah, okay.
But now we're up to that new pasuk. So beautiful.
What's the pasuk word?
Go ahead. Vayavo'u.
No.
Vayavo'u, numbers pasuk 2, 32:2.
On the page?
Yes. Number 2. Okay. Vayavo'u. Okay. B'nai Gad Uvnei Reuven Vayomaru El Moshe Va'el El-Azar HaKohen Va'el Nasi'e Ha'edah Lemor. Okay. The children of God and the children of Reuben came and said to Moses, to Eleazar the Kohen, and to the leaders of the assembly, saying.
So the first step was just approaching the Gedolim, right? They realized you have to put this by the board of directors. This is not the game plan, and you're definitely going to need someone high up to approve it. So they had the guts to go to the big wigs, right? The heads of all the entire heads of the nation, which included Moshe. Aaron had already died, so Aaron but the head going to go was Elazar. And obviously they sat together, just like when Aaron was allowed to sit with Moshe. Elazar did. And then the other leaders, they're probably all in like the base midrash, basically. Right? So like they're in the base midrash, talking, learning, whatever, and then some people come and approach them that they have a special halacha that they're trying to clarify, right? Which is basically, are you going to let us stay here and make money, or do we have to come into Israel? But they phrased it in an interesting way. Leib, you want to try Pasuk Gimel?
Ataros v'Divon v'Yazer v'Nim Lo v'Cheshbon v'El Alei v'Zvam v'Vo v'Rom.
So, by the way, if you noticed, in the previous pasuk, in pasuk Aleph, where it did talk about this land being incredibly lush and good pasture, and they mentioned only two names: Yazer, Eretz Yazer, and Gila. Gave it two, as if there were like two major portions of that land. I guess maybe the ones that belong to Og, and the other ones belong to Sifon, perhaps, in the large way. Now they're getting very technical. Instead of just coming and saying the two names that were provided before, the two major areas, they're going to like specifics of each. It's like saying not just eastern United States and western United States. They're saying no, New York and Washington and Boston. They're going to like the specifics. Perhaps they're trying to paint a more down-to-earth picture of what's going on over there, so that it would be more sympathetic in their favor. I'm going through all the names. How many names did they mention? Three, and 3. 9. Interesting. 9 different cities that they mentioned. Some of them have been mentioned before, like, for example, Yazer have been mentioned before, but so it could be that Gila was just a major area, but there was no one place called Gila. Okay, so these 9 different areas, they figure, were cities that had been conquered and would be known to the Gadol. So Pasuk Dalid, Matt, you want to try it?
Okay. Haaretz asher hika Hashem lifnei adat Yisrael Eretz mikneh kiv Bala'a ba'decha mikneh. The land that Hashem smote before the assembly of Israel. It is a land for livestock, and your servants have livestock.
And it's interesting, in the Sefer Torah, you see that Samech, after that Pasuk, before Pasuk Hey, there's like a Samech, which maybe other editions don't have a Samech there, because really in the Sefer Torah there's no Samech, it's just a bigger space. There's a space between the psukim there that shows like a break, like a new paragraph. So in a sense, this is one end of one section, which is pretty strange, because all they did so far was go up to Moshe and just describe the situation. They didn't make their request yet. So it could be, maybe the Torah is trying to just hint to us that after they just described the situation, before they actually made their request, they waited for permission to go on. So far they're just saying sort of a neutral fact. Neutral fact, there are these lands which Hashem has struck, as you said, which Hashem has let them win from the Goyim, and they happen to be land that's suitable for pasture, for grazing. And it happens to be that we have flock, but they still haven't made their request. So it seems to be, it could be that when you make a request, it's always good to just lay out some of the facts first and then just wait, let them sink in, and then go on to the actual request. Maybe that's also what Torah teaches. So, there's no Rashi on that. Although in Gimel there are a few of the names Rashi talks about as being Me'eretz Sichon Ba'og. Right? So these are places they had conquered from Sichon and Og, two different kingdoms that they were able to conquer, and they figured that these places are suitable for them, and therefore maybe it's Mina Shemayim that they should be there. Okay, Pasuk Hey, you want to try it, Leib?
Sure. Vayomru im tzanu chaim be'einecha nitan es ha'aretz azos ba'avadecha ba'achuza al ta'avivenu es hayarden. So they said that im is width.
Mm-hmm.
What's im?
If.
If. Width is with an I, right?
Right. I always say the way to remember is the way ayin is written, not print, but in the script. It's like that. It's almost like two arms interlocking to show you like two people together with, in a sense of being with each other. As opposed to if.
Right. They said that if matzanu hain, that they commanded.
Matzah means to find. Like a metzia is a good find, right? Baba metzia. We talk about finding lost objects.
If they found.
No, we have found.
We.
Matzah nu.
If
Nu
we
is like
found.
anach nu. That's how you can know you're in the past tense. First of all, the real word is matzah, and then the nu is just an addition, a suffix, which creates the person who you're talking about. So matzah would just be the past tense, and then the nu makes it we. So it's an expression. If
In their eyes.
in your eyes.
In
So basically it's like walking up to someone and saying, if you like me, if I found any grace in your eyes, if you happen to like me, then please do me a favor. Okay, then yutan, what's that verb? The root being 10, which would mean, right, like people walk up in the street and say, tenly, tenly, tenly,
give me.
give me, right? So tain, or no tain, or even the verb is latet, as an infinitive, means to give.
So this is
But
future
this is
or
the future because the yud throws it into the future, right? A yud at the beginning of a verb will often throw in the future. There's other letters that can be added at the beginning of the throw into the future. But then the oo is unusual, so that's a combination of future and passive. Okay? So for example, the food will be eaten. That's future and passive. The book will be read. The road will be traveled. Right? So you're taking a future and a passive and you're mixing them together. So yutan means it shall be given. Right? So they're saying, not saying give us, they're not commanding him, they're sort of suggesting in the future that it should be given.
Should be be given, the land shall be given as those.
This.
This.
It's like pointing with your finger.
Right,
This land. This land, which we just enumerated, all these cities that are in this section, what we're requesting is that it should be given to
the to the slave.
Eved is a
slave,
servant, also servant.
So
So that's like, I am your servant, I am beholden to you, I am like your subject, as it were.
And the cha is your servants?
That's right.
To your servants, la chuza.
Right, so choz means to grab onto. But they use that to mean like for a permanent holding. Like they say, these are your holdings, these are your properties that you hold on to really forever. Permanent holdings, permanent estate. So that becomes like the inheritance. So that's what they're asking for. They're in a subtle way saying, without yet saying it, can we stay here and this will be our inheritance and we won't have to go over Eretz Yisrael to get our inheritance. We sort of give up our portion. Since they're being generous, we're giving away our portion in Israel to get a portion here. Like the person saying, I have a house in Jerusalem. I'd like Labe to get it and like Matt to get my other house. And I'll stay in New York, and I'll instead take my house in New York, right? Very generous in a way, right? That's what they're saying.
Okay.
So they're saying, but they're being very coveted, right? Because they're talking to the greatest Jews who lived in their day. They're saying they're calling themselves their servant, right? Which is a way of the person understanding that I'm not commanding you, I'm just your servant. I'm just whatever you say, I have to listen to you. So I'm not even telling you what to do. I'm just suggesting. They're not even saying you should give us. They're saying the land should be given. Again, it's all being said in a very, very honorable way. And at the very end, they command Moshe, which is a bit cheeky. Al ta'vireinu. Right? The word al is like don't.
Oh, don't.
Right? They have a funny expression at banks, a part where you can make your own deposits, the little machine where you make your own deposits, or you put your slip through the little slit. That's called al-tor, where there's no line. Al-tor, there's no line. When you have a phone with no line, like a remote control phone, it's called al-khut. Al-khut, like saying not. But it's also a way of saying a command, don't do this, right? So they're almost commanding him. Al ta'vireinu. La'avir means to cross something over, right? Over means, it's really the English word, like the English word over. To go over something, to go from one area to another, to go over the border, to go over the river. So they're making it into the causative. Don't make us go over. Al ta'vireinu. Don't you make us go over the Yarden, right? So the first part I would say was beautiful. They were being very honorable and calling Moshe Rabbeinu, if we have found grace in your eyes, may the land be given to us. But then at the end they throw in, right? That often happens. Like you can be, like,
backhanded compliment.
You can be, you can cover up your true nature a bit, but you never quite fully cover it over, right? Like the famous, some say it was the Rambam, some say it was Rabbi Yonasan Eibish's having a machlokus with the Goyim, if you can train animals, which would basically show that man is just a very sophisticated animal. So they trained a cat to be able to serve the food, and he agreed to attend, and he had to admit if they were right. So he said, it looks like you trained your cat very well. Just I need a little snuff for my snuff box. And he went like this, he pulled out a snuff box, and a little mouse slipped out of the box. And the cat that had been serving the drink so nicely up to that point, then take your drinks, guys, I'm going after that mouse. So all the true colors came out in that 1 second.
That's the Maisa Shahaya?
Huh?
Maisa Shahaya.
Apparently, they say it about Rav Yonasan Eibishus, who lived maybe in the 1600s or 1700s. They say it also about the Rambam, the Adamachlokus, that came out like that. So whether it's just apocryphal or whether they both happen or one of them happened, I don't know. Wow. But the truth is, we see it all the time. People who are trying to act like they're really sophisticated people, and then all of a sudden the truth comes out when they want to just push forward their little platform. That's what they're doing over here. They're saying, please, this, that, and the other, but don't make us go over.
Right, the Kisei, Kasa, what Kasa.
Right, you can tell a person right by these things.
She was so beautiful, right up until the point she opened her mouth.
Right, exactly. All right, so basically, we're seeing a little bit of that true colors coming out, because what are they saying? They're commanding Moshe what to do. It's really interesting if you think about it in davening. Some parts, we just say it in the future, this should be, right? But sometimes we actually command Hashem, which is also good chutzpah. But it seems that sometimes it's appropriate. It's called chutzpah de kedusha. To actually demand something, like sometimes you get a little bit assertive with Hashem.
No, it's more than that, and I don't understand it. I've been meaning to ask, okay, but when I watch Ravs in there, there's a point in the davening where they're giving it to Hashem. Now, I don't think there's any disrespect in what they're doing, but I have no idea what they're doing.
Right. Well, they say sometimes it's like a person fighting for his life. If you ever see someone drowning in the ocean, I actually saved someone from drowning one time, and I almost went down underneath the guy because I stayed from the wrong way, from the front instead of from the back. Anyhow, people thrash around when they're in trouble. So it's not necessarily like that, like that.
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh, I'm about to drown. I feel like I'm drowning. Like your story, really. That there was no other way than to scream out, please save me. It's more than the command. It's more, but I'm saying something, if you look at the sitter, just start to make a note. Is this in the future tense? How am I asking Hashem for this thing? Chanenu me'ita chadea b'ilama. Chanenu is like a command. Give us a free gift of wisdom. Obviously, they say it should always be done as a poor person standing by the door, as if you're begging the wealthy man for a little bit of food, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But the wording that Chazal put in our mouths is interesting, that sometimes it sounds like we're saying command form, but obviously we have to make it appropriate. But in a sense, we're commanding Hashem, which obviously is, we have to be very careful how we do it. Okay, in the meantime, so they start to say, don't make us go over the river. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu was very perceptive, and he heard them, and he wanted to put them in their place, first of all. The guys have definitely gotten off of first base. So, Pasuk Vav, you want to try it, Lane?
ויאמר משה לבני גד ולבני ראובן אחיכם יבואו למלחמה ואתם תשבו פה. Moshe said, Lifnei God, in front of God.
No, not in front of. It's not Lifnei, it's Libnei.
Oh, Libnei.
To the children of God, the members of their tribe.
Right.
Each one, I think it sounds like he addressed them separately, even though he may have said it all at once, but he still, when you have two groups, you make it clear that you're addressing each group. Right?
Libnei, Reuven, the children of Reuven, Achechem.
Okay, so without the hey at the beginning of that word, just talk about the word Achehem.
Like brothers?
Achechem.
Their brother?
Right. It's now, Ach is the word brother, and then that Yud shows that it should be plural, except the mem that would normally be at the end of a plural, Achim, falls off in order to put that Chem onto it, which means it's part of that word as well. So the Chem means yours, plural. He's talking to a group of people, so he's talking about yours, but he's talking about yours in the plural. So that's Achechem, your brothers. Your brothers. But the hey, look at Rashi down below. Rashi actually informs you that often you have a hey at the beginning of a word, not what we know hey does to make it the word ba. But Rashi said there's another function of the word hey, of the letter hey, at the beginning of a word. See what Rashi says down there? Tamiha. Right? Like sometimes, if you ever learn Tosfos, sometimes Tosfos says Tema. Right? To ask this question. Or sometimes Rashi, when he wants to give you a stage direction in the Gemara, to know how to read the Gemara, he'll tell you Bitamiha. So people say in yeshiva, bitmiya. But it's really bid tamiha. Read this in astonishment. And that's what Tosfos is also saying when he asked that kind of a question, tema. It's a very strong question of Tosfos, much stronger than a normal question of Tosfos. Like saying, I'm astonished. How could that ever have happened? How could you ever have said that? How could he ever have said that? So Rashi gives you stage directions sometimes because you don't know how to read the Gemara, right? It wasn't just Steinsaltz who decided to give you direction about how to read the Gemara. Rashi often does it. That's really one of Rashi's jobs. So he'll sometimes just come out and tell you, and you're probably not aware of this, you should read this bid tamiyah, in astonishment. In other words, read it as a question. That's what he's using, saying over here also. Here it's lashon tamiha. Same exact thing as he says in Gemara, really. Except there he just says bid tamiha. Here he's saying lashon tamiha. Okay? So lashon, the word lashon, we know lashon means the tongue. It also means language, right? Like lashon hara means language which is bad, right? Not just the tongue, right? It also talks about a language. This lashon is a language of something. So usage of language which shows you tamiha, which shows you, right? How would you translate now to me after that introduction that I gave? What would tamiha mean? Could mean astonishment. That's technically what it means. But also a question, just a question, right? Like Rashi in Chumash, in Gemara tells you to read something bit tamiha, he's telling you to read it as a question. Here Rashi's saying that's what this is. It's a lashon, it's an expression, it's a language of tamiha, of a question. In other words, read this as a question, as opposed to a statement. So Moshe Rabbeinu was asking a question. So even though we don't always know when a question, there's no question mark at the end of the question, but this is one of the ways you know. If the hey is there, that it's out of place. It's there to create the question. So instead of just making a statement about the brothers, he's asking a question about the brothers.
Shall my brothers come? Will my brothers
Right. Ha-achechem, are your brothers,
come in?
Yavo'u, in other words, shall they come in?
Yeah. To war.
Right, in other words, to fight a war.
Atem and you, Teshvu Po.
You guys will end up
They are here.
dwelling, right? Lashavet means to sit, it also means to dwell. Like certain communities are called a moshav, because that's just where they're dwelling, right? It's a dwelling place. So, and that's what the Torah says about sukkah, dwell in a sukkah, right? Sukkah's teshvu. So it's like dwelling in a certain place. So he's saying, look, you want your brothers to go in to Eretz Israel, all the other tribes should just go in and do all the fighting, and you guys who've already done the fighting over here, it's already in your pocket, you'll just dwell over here and watch with your binoculars while we have hundreds of people dying in war on the other side of the river. But he didn't say that as a, right? Rashi says he didn't just say that, okay, you guys want to sit over here while your brothers go die in a war? He was saying, he's asking a question, will you do that? Is that what you really want? Is that what you're asking me, that you want to stay here while your brothers go and fight the war? Okay? But it's interesting, because he didn't put the part about staying here first, like I would have said in English. What, you want to just stay here while all your brothers go across the river and die in a war? He said the brothers going across and fighting first. Do you want your brothers to go fight? And you guys will just stay here. He was trying to focus them on the real problem. The real problem is you want other people to go fight your wars, and you just sit here in comfort, right? That's not good. That's not the way, that's not a nation, right? Nation means we do everything together. And also, he's going to see later on that if you stay here while they go over and fight, they're going to think that you're afraid to go and fight. And that's going to create the same, basically, head trip and paranoia that the spies created years ago when we first wanted to go into Eretz Israel. And they were saying, no, we shouldn't go, blah, blah, blah. And it created a panic. Well, that same problem now, if you guys stay here while we go over and fight. So there's numerous problems that he was foreseeing as a leader of the nation, should he give in to this. So we know in the end he did give in, but he had to do it in such a way that it did not create this panic that would ensue, plus they had to promise to come fight. So when they promised to come fight, it solved both problems. People saw they weren't afraid. They're going to come over and fight as well. And they also were showing a unity with the nation, and not just, we already got ours, and you guys will go get killed on the other side. No. They agreed to act as a nation. Okay, we'll stop here. Mr. Hashem, see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Rabbi Yashikoah.
Nice having you aboard. Nice to have you. Glad you participated. I guess you're over your jet.